Paul Richards, who left BYU in 1992 as the spokesman, said, I worked in public affairs for the church for 13 years. I had to lie all the time. What does the research on lying say? Let's cover some of these areas. University of Massachusetts psychologist Robert Feldman, who's been studying lying for decades. Lying boils down to the shifting sands of the self, trying to look good both to ourselves and others. Feldman says, it's tied in with self-esteem. We find that as soon as people feel that their self-esteem is threatened, they immediately begin to lie at higher levels. A new study finds that a sense of moral superiority can lead to unethical acts such as cheating. In fact, some of the best do-gooders can become the worst cheats. For example, somebody could rationalize cheating on a test as a way of achieving their dream of becoming a doctor and helping people. Politicians will frequently rationalize saying something during their campaign so they can get elected and then do good. In November's 2007 issue of the Journal of Applied Psychology, researchers found that when this line between right and wrong is ambiguous among people who think of themselves as having high moral standards, the do-gooders can become the worst of cheaters. And we saw this in the history. When you think you're doing it for a pure and noble cause, you can rationalize nearly anything. You remember Stanley Milgram's experiments where he wanted to find out why in Nazi Germany, everyday citizens and others were so willing to carry out Hitler's orders to kill and torture. And so he set up this experiment that you all see on grainy videotape in Psychology 101, where someone is giving nonsense lists of questions to somebody on the other side who they can't see. And the person, if they answer it wrong, they give them an electric shock. And then they turn up the dial that's very, very clearly says, you know, where there's a lethal amount of electric shock. And in one case, if the first study he did, he even had the man on the other side screaming and crying at some point, saying, I've got a heart problem. I've got a heart condition. You are killing me. Please stop. You're killing me. Stop it. For God's sake, stop. 63% of those engaged in the experiment who thought they were giving lethal doses of electric shock, they really weren't, actually did follow through because someone dressed in a lab coat, turned out to be a biology teacher, told them to. Now, imagine the impact of an authority figure the stature of Joseph Smith or Brigham Young or today Thomas S. Monson and the 12 apostles, and how little children are indoctrinated every single minute of every day of their lives to believe that these men are nearly infallible and godlike. What impact does that kind of an authority figure have on them? If a stranger dressed in a lab coat carrying a clipboard can say, give it to him. Something to think about. The Lucifer effect by Philip Zimbardo. For many, many years, he's the one who did the Stanford prison experiments. A host of situational forces can dominate an individual's will to resist evil. Zimbardo suggests that we see evil in incremental terms as something of which we're all capable, depending on the circumstances. People aren't bad apples as much as they are in a bad barrel, an environment where particular social forces promote lying and worse forms of victimization. These insular societies, these insular cultures, where it's almost like living in a silo, where everything you hear and see and read about and everybody you interact with is promoting the same agenda. What are those systems? Group pressures, obedience to authority, dehumanization of others, always them and us, always polarized. Dominant ideologies and groupthink enable illegitimate ends to justify deceitful means.